Hi, this is James Paterson, and delighted to be here again with Jaap van Oerle in our series of talking about auditing in biopharma. Nice to see you again, Jaap.
It's great to be back, James. Happy to see you as well and looking forward to this video session.
Thank you. You're going to summarize what we've been up to?
Yes. So far we have made videos about the pharma industry and internal audit, and talking about why it is so interesting to be an internal auditor in the pharma industry. We have covered the three main stages of the value chain in the pharma business, being R&D, manufacturing and supply, and marketing and sales. Today, we'll speak a bit more about the management and support functions. And what I mean with that is it's the oil in the machine of the value chain, how we keep the value chain going. And the two topics that we have selected here is everything that has to do with strategy, organization, and decision-making. And in the second part, we'll look at the support functions that enable the value chain functions to actually deliver on their mission.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jaap. That's lovely. So talking about the whole strategy and organization and decision making using the framework that we've come up with, the obvious thing is if you want to be a successful organization in pharma, you need to have a good strategy, you need to have the right organization. Now, traditionally, this is not an area that internal audit would typically get involved in. But what's really important is if you look at the research, and Jaap and I know this, much of the research shows that value is won or lost because of good or bad strategic choices. So there is a really important role for internal audit if it wants to add value to understand how senior management are making these strategic choices. And just an obvious thing is when an organization is making choices, shall we invest in this country? Shall we pursue this portfolio of products? There are often issues of which areas are not chosen. And one of the important roles that internal audit can play is to say, well, in your decision-making processes, why did you rule out this? What was the basis of that? Because obviously what you need is a pharma company that doesn't make decisions simply based on its own comfort zone, but actually looks for where the real need is in the market for therapies that will be needed by patients. Anything else you'd like to add on the strategic front, Jaap?
Yes, and I think you very rightfully said that strategy is something that auditors don't feel comfortable with to touch. But when you think about strategy as the translation from what the organizational purpose and objectives are into what we are going to do as an organization to achieve those objectives, the strategy actually gives you a really good insight about how the organization is going to operate to achieve those objectives. You have almost a one-on-one reading about where the organization is prepared to take risks, where they are taking risks, and how much risk they will be taking. And so the internal auditor needs to really well understand that strategy to know what its audit program should look like. It tells you exactly what you need to audit.
And we talked earlier, Jaap, about the whole issue of the quality of metrics that might be created, or also the way that reward systems are set as well.
Right, because the strategy then is also ending up in reward systems, so you can measure the risk appetite that people may have.
Perfect. So obviously you have an organization that's going somewhere, and that will normally require it to be able to be agile and to be able to change. You can see this massively in the current COVID challenge, where organizations all across the world are trying to mobilize as quickly as possible their ability to come up with their new products. And the key thing to say here is that transformation projects will have a business case. There will be different parts of the organization that all need to do things in alignment with one another. There will be benefits that we'll be hoping to achieve. And even if there's a very experienced project management capability, you'd be surprised how valuable it can be to have an internal audit function coming along and saying, well, are you really sure that the people in that function understand what's going on and what they need to do? So, and this is an increasingly fascinating and very, very valuable area that internal audit can work in on change management and change projects. Any other comments there, Jaap?
Oh, yes. The transformation is about what the future will look like, and auditors who are not interested in being aware of what the future will be like and helping to shape that future. I mean, auditors who prefer auditing the past than helping influencing the future will by definition add less value to the organization. So everything that has to do with change and transformation should be in the forefront of the focus of internal audit.
Great. And in fact, the standards for internal auditors in 2017 were emphasized to include insight and foresight. So this is very much the direction that our profession is going in. And then in terms of decision making, this is another area that internal audit should be looking at. It's called, corporate governance. And it's part of the scope of internal audit that, again, in the past, internal audit would have tended to avoid, but in modern auditing, we must look at. A quick comment on the governance side, yeah.
So I mean, auditors are always told that they shouldn't second guess management's decision. And that's, of course, very, very true. But on the other hand, in my experience, what I've seen is that decision-making processes invariably point towards the root causes of when things don't go so well, but also when things work out very well. And so it's those decision-making processes, the quality of the decision-making process that actually defines the outcome of what the organization undertakes. And so in my view, decision-making processes need to be audited, and that can be done without second-guessing management's decisions.
And an interesting element of this is if somebody is preparing a board paper and they know that it's just possible that somebody might be checking the assumptions behind that board paper or the risk assessment, just the fact that it's potentially in the scope may mean that they're not tempted to be more optimistic in their business case than they should be. So thank you for making that point, Jaap. Let's talk about the support functions for a moment. There's obviously IT, management intelligence and finance. These would be very traditional areas potentially to work in for audit. The bit I'd like to emphasize to give people another angle on this is it is so interesting when you're a pharmaceuticals company almost how much data there is. And if you're not careful and you're not clear enough about does this data mean the same thing between, Italy or America or Japan, you will aggregate that data up, but actually you may make conclusions that aren't based on a real message. They're based on adding apples versus pears versus oranges. So there's some really interesting activities simply in internal audit looking at the quality and consistency of information across different parts of the organization. Any comments there, Jaap?
No, I can only confirm that while the support functions are enablers to the organization, but it's not just about enabling. I think well-functioning support functions have the potential of providing a competitive edge in terms of how the business is run and how the business competes with their competitors. And that competitive edge has a lot to do with quality of information and decision-making.
Great. So the next area is resourcing. I mean, there's the obvious things about budgeting, but the area I'd like to emphasize is around talent management and planning. And maybe again, a specific area just to make this topical. A good internal audit function will look at the whole HR processes, But a very basic thing is to look at things like emergency cover as well as succession. So if you think about what's happened with COVID, many organizations have suddenly found themselves missing people. And the importance of being able to see that as a risk and then to look at, well, if that person suddenly wasn't available, who actually would stand into their role? And the important issue here is not a question of simply, is there a person who can scrape by and just about do the job? Is there a person who can really do a close enough job so that the quality of what's going on in that area won't diminish drastically? So again, this is the sort of thing that internal audit can be involved in. Jaap, a comment from you?
Yes, you bring up a way of looking at business continuity, and business continuity has a lot to do with people coming to work. And just to give it the background against what we talked about earlier, being transformations and change, when you transform an organization, your need of people will change dramatically as well, geographically, but also in terms of skills and experience. And to keep your business going through a transformation has a very important people dimension, to make sure that you keep the right people long enough to the organization, not to disrupt your business, but also to have the new people, if needed, readily available by the time you're on your new platform.
Very good. Then the final area I'd like to emphasize is the whole issue of compliance and regulation. I mentioned earlier in our discussion series that if you imagine that pharma in the 2020s is anything like pharma 30, 20, even 10 years ago, it's not. The emphasis on maintaining public trust and regulatory trust is amazing. I can genuinely say that. I do consulting work, go to see other industries, and I'm still strongly sharing stuff that comes from the background that I've had in biopharma. And one obvious thing is that internal audit in biopharma must work in partnership with these other functions, but also be prepared to measure how much they can be trusted to push them in certain directions to make them even better. So an interesting and good thing about auditing in biopharma is you're not simply on your own. You will be working with important allies in the business to help move it forward and keep it compliant and stop it tripping over important areas. A comment from you, Jaap?
Yes, thank you for pointing this last item that you mentioned. The number of areas that have regulations in the pharma industry is everywhere, and I have audited across the value chain in this industry, and in every area that you get, there are regulations for research, for development, for manufacturing, for marketing, but also for intellectual property, for privacy, for your IT systems, the validation of, I mean, everything is regulated. And the point is that those regulations are not just there for their own purpose. They have a reason of being, which is safety of patients and making sure that the interests that the industry is serving are done in an ethical and in a safe way for people that should benefit from the industry. There are too many regulations, however, for one person to actually fully understand, and that's one of my takeaways from this industry. There is no way that you can audit this industry comprehensively without partnering with experts in these diverse areas. And so internal audit in pharma has a pretty large challenge of assembling the right teams for every audit. And you may have a stable core team of auditors who know the audit process and the reporting, but every assignment you need to think about what kind of skills and experience do I need to bring into this team to be up to the task. And for instance, guest auditor programs and sometimes some external sources should be considered to be able to cope with this jungle of regulations.
Fantastic. So look, just to conclude this, We finished the value chain, but Jaap and I, during the course of this discussion series, think that there are other key areas that we should talk about. One is around the difference between traditional auditors and progressive auditors just generally. And the other one has been touched upon, is how to manage and what to look for in a really good internal audit team. So there'll be some more videos coming up to discuss those as well. Jaap, thanks again now for this video as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to go into the next video and to look at what the comfort zone of an auditor looks like and what it is to get out of that comfort zone.
Lovely. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.